Welcome, everyone, to Black Men Speak. I am your co host, the J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, D. Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise TD3 Jimmy. It is Wednesday night, March the 22nd, 2023. Jimmy, if it's Wednesday night.
It's certainly Black Men Speak. So, Tom, before we get started, let's give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. Also, a shout out to 4S Films and our own studio for providing the virtual studio. And Tom, a shameless plug for a shirt company fashion company that's going to be launching this summer called RM Fashion and Company. And RM stands for Real Men. So I'm wearing one of their prototype frat shirts right now. Um, Egyptian cotton, Tom, handmade, so
Nice.
customized for real men. And also another product that my factory is turning out. We just produced a line of Juneteenth socks. I hope you can see this. It's a little dark. Let me see if I can put it in the light here. These are tube socks with a heart symbol and the Juneteenth symbol on them. So I'll be posting the website where you can go purchase this if you're interested for Juneteenth. And the proceeds, Tom, goes to a nonprofit who provides homes for single mothers with children
Nice.
um, and disabled veterans. So the money goes to a good cause. I was just putting it out there so people don't think that I'm putting the money towards my new Lamborghini or anything. so
Lamborghini.
with that being said, Tom, we've gotten everything out of the way. Let's kick off this show. One other thing before we get started, everyone. This is the most progressive news show dedicated to talking about Black interests. Of course, we are the Black men from Black Men Speak, but our opinion is not the only opinion. So we want to hear from everyone watching the show whether you're a guest or you chime in on the chat line or you just watch. Please give us feedback on what you are interested in hearing about, and we will go research it and bring it to you. So, Tom, we're not just an opinion show; we're also a news channel.
Yes, you are very true, Jimmy. And we are committed to providing local, national, and international news of relevance to our communities.
So, with that being said, Tom, let's talk about the show. What do you have for us tonight?
Well, as always, we try to come up with a broad variety of areas of interest. And so, Jimmy, we have a couple of interesting stories tonight. Starting off, not per se, with Kareem Abdul Jabbar, NBA champion, one of the all time greats of all sports, has recently auctioned off his championship memorabilia to help kids going into STEM. A very, very good feel good story. We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
We're also going to talk about another emerging potential great athlete, Miss Saylor Hawkins, who is doing great things in gymnastics and diving, but she is involved in a ton of different sports. This is someone that you might want to watch.
Keep an eye on her, yes.
We also have a story out of the Dirty South in South Carolina. I think that's still called the Dirty South, of an officer who ends up checking another officer who was arresting a disabled man who, I guess, allegedly had a firearm on him and had nothing on him, and they had to deal with that, Jimmy. So we'll talk about that very briefly and kind of talk about what happens in these situations. And then finally, in the latter part of our show, we're going to have our expert guru, CPA, brother John Williams, to talk about changes to the IRS Tax Code that could have an impact on your income and capital gains.
Okay, great.
So we have a full show
Well, let's
tonight.
get started, Tom. We got a full show.
Absolutely. So first, let's talk about Kareem. One of my favorites, one of the all-time greats in sports. I think his all-time scoring record was just surpassed by the great LeBron James, but there are still folks who feel that Kareem is one of the all-time greatest on the Mount Rushmore of the NBA at least.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But, he did something, Jimmy, that I don't know that a lot of people would do. And I believe we may have a video on it, but he just auctioned off his championship rings and his championship trophies to help raise money for his foundation to help kids in STEM.
He did, Tom. And While you just mentioned the video, let's cue it up, and then on the back side of it, we'll talk about it.
All right, that sounds good. Let's.
Well, basketball legend Kareem Abdul Jabbar is teaching us that material items, they don't mean success. Details are now surfacing regarding the 2019 sale of the Legends Championship ring and league memorabilia. Kareem doled the items for a $2.8 million payment that went to support a youth education program. He says over the years, he's grown less attached to them, and that the inspiration behind the gesture was to ensure that children who were underserved and underrepresented could spend 5 days in the Angeles National Forest.
In the forest?
In the forest, and in the park. He wants to send kids
like
to the
camping?
park. Yeah.
Ooh. I think that's.
You're not a fan of camping?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
However, listen, he's an amazing athlete, legendary, iconic. But I would doesn't he have kids and I think one of his children is in the coaching and I just would have left those for them. That's just me.
I think he probably figured they already have enough coming to them, right?
But those are artifacts that you can't get back. I mean, you won that in a moment. It's historic. I mean, it's legendary. Like, you're not gonna get that ring back.
Kareem said, "It's mine, and this is what I'm gonna do with my ring."
Respect. But I think I would have kept those in like the family,
like a family heirloom kind of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting story, Jimmy. I don't know that there are a lot of people who could do that. I mean, I know that Kareem is not a billionaire, as some of the great athletes are. But, I don't know if some of the greats of all-time sports would be willing to auction off their championship memorabilia. And Jimmy, I don't know if I am frozen or you are frozen, but I am not able to hear you. So I am hoping that it is not me. Well, folks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to kind of discuss this story from my perspective.
Okay. Sorry about that.
There we
Looks
go,
like our
Jimmy.
streaming server is having some issues.
Okay.
So I apologize about the quality of that.
All right, Jimmy. So let's get to the story, Jimmy. I don't know if there are a lot of great athletes out there, and I know that Kareem is not a billionaire, but I don't know if even the folks who are billionaires out there who are in the sports arena would be willing to do this.
Tom, this is I've never heard anyone doing this before. Generally, if someone sells a championship ring, it's because they're in financial trouble. So they're doing it to raise money for themselves. So I've never seen an athlete actually sell championship rings or trophies in order to donate to their nonprofit.
Yeah, Jimmy. Let's kind of talk about the messaging on this and the impact, because see now, Kareem is in one of those spaces. He doesn't really put himself out there in the public eye. You don't see him on the news, on mass media a lot. Probably the most that he's gotten within the last several years was LeBron breaking his all-time scoring record.
Correct.
In your opinion, what's the message here with him doing something like this? And then what do you think about Kareem's legacy? Because, I mean, he's now getting into that phase where there are some of us who have been around for a while who remember his greatness on the court, and he's done things in the community. He's had a couple of controversial things come up in the media, but nothing what I would consider to be significant. And let's talk about his legacy.
Well, Tommy, he's pretty much kept it low key. He doesn't do a lot of endorsements. You don't see him on a lot of talk shows. So it seems like he's found other things in life to center on as opposed to sports. And working with underprivileged kids, you're getting them exposed to STEM and getting them exposed to nature and field trips. It seemed to be more of an interest in his life. His life seemed to be more centered on these things than money-making pursuits. Because certainly with his name and his fame, he could certainly draw on that to make and use it to earn a hefty sum of money if he wanted to. It doesn't seem like he's interested in doing these things. In fact, the fact that he's willing to sell off memorabilia and championship rings show you just how detached he is from basketball now. So it doesn't seem like basketball is the center point of his life anymore, Tom. So I hope this is a lesson for other athletes when it's time to leave the game and walk away from it, that you walk away from it and you find other things to center your life around, as opposed to trying to hold on to the glory days of sports when you were involved and you were a star and you had fans and everybody adored you. Find some other things that are more meaningful in life than just aberration. I can't say the word from fans. So
I got you, Jimmy. And you know,
my Joe Biden moments catching up with me.
Come on now.
I'm getting old, Tom.
You mean your Ronald Reagan moment?
Well, maybe a little bit of both of them. So,
gotcha. Well, I mean, he has become the humanitarian. We want to welcome Edward Willis, who is now on the chat line. We want to thank everyone for coming in. Also, Brother Asar, who is one of our stalwart supporters out there in the community. So Edward has an interesting comment. It says, I believe around the same time frame, Kareem came to Dallas and helped raise $900,000. That's almost $1 million for St. Philip's Hospital. That is excellent.
Oh, and really?
Then, yeah. And I wasn't aware of that.
I wasn't either.
Brother Asar made another insightful comment. Basketball is not the center point of his life. And, you know, at his age, immortality is staring him in the face, and he wants to do good with what he has to help others. All due respect. And what now he is doing, in my opinion, is he is putting a seed to make people's lives better, young people's lives better, that will far outlive him, Jimmy. And that is what legacy is about once you get to that certain age, is doing something that's going to far outlast you.
Well, Tom, that's a true value of life. You know, many people have said this in different ways, but I'm going to quote Zig Ziglar, who always said that you should try to do something for other people who can't do anything for you in return. And that's where you get the most meaning out of life. And so Kareem Abdul Jabbar is doing that. So he's doing for others and needy people, needy kids. And none of those people can do anything for him in return other than be successful in life. Don't fall to temptations of, you know, crime, drugs, and other vices, and do something meaningful with your life where you can look back and say, "Hey, that Kareem person had a hand in helping keep me on the right track."
Yeah, I would be for making sure that we get the Mount Rushmore of the NBA and making sure that he is on that to make sure that his legacy is cemented. We'd like to now also welcome Marion Square to the chat line. Welcome to the chat line, Miss Marion. And of course, our good brother Freddie Roberts is back. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Brother Roberts. And Miss Audrey K. Booker, she is on the chat line with us as well. So make sure that, of course, you hit that like button, share this information. If you have not, I know everybody on the chat line is subscribed, but want to thank you for joining us.
Invite a friend.
Exactly.
And also, Tom, let everybody know we have a new chat line phone number.
Yes. What is that number?
So let's put it up on the screen for everyone if I can find it.
And by the way, Ms. Booker has a comment here. He wants to impact children's lives that are underprivileged. How honorable to give up something that he earned during his tenure in basketball. That's a genuine sacrifice. Yeah, that is a lot to sacrifice, because that is his legacy on the court. So that is excellent. So it looks like we do have a number. It might be a little bit difficult to see. You might want to put a hash between it. But
let's see if we can edit it and doctor it up a little bit.
Yeah. So in the meantime, folks, we want to honor and give flowers to Mr. Kareem Abdul Jabbar while he is still living. Obviously, we pray that he has a lot of life ahead of him, but doing things to impact the kids in our community. There are a lot of folks to do that, but for someone in his category, it is a great honor, and we honor him for what he is doing to impact our children and the future of our community, Jimmy. So let's get to the next story, Jimmy. We're going to go from a legacy athlete that we all know to an emerging athlete that we hope we'll be seeing great things from her. Miss Saylor Hawkins, who is a multi-sport athlete, young lady. I don't think that I knew about her before you brought it to my attention, Jimmy, but she is a multi-sport athlete that has quite a few accolades, and you know, she is participating and competing in some sports that we are very familiar with, but also in some sports, Jimmy, that we are not so familiar seeing our faces in that. So we're talking about sports like gymnastics, swimming, diving, things of that nature. So I think you have a video
Yes.
from Miss Saylor as well.
Yeah, she's a two-time state champion from Minnesota, high school state champion, but she's won other championships, and she kind of caught my attention, Tom, because she's here locally. She attends school at UNT.
Oh, good deal.
So yes, let's play a short clip on Miss Saylor Hawkins.
All righty.
Okay.
All right, Jimmy. I'm not a swimming expert, so I know obviously she's probably has a lot of technical points, and I know she's gotten a lot of accolades, Jimmy. I'm wondering where the rest of her swimsuit is, quite frankly.
Tom, that's the way they wear them these days.
I didn't see the other girls with the rest of the stuff hanging out.
Well, you know what, Tom? I guess in today's age of, I guess if you have it, I guess say is you have it flaunted. But I was going to say, Tom,
I don't think that our young sisters can afford to flaunt it. There's enough flaunting out there.
I don't know how UNT finished, but I did a few weekends ago, saw the dive championship as they were in and participating, and she was participating. The 3 meter and the 10 meter diving platforms. So I will go back and check to see how they finish. But yeah, she's an up and coming star in that particular sport.
Yeah.
So you saying you disagree with the uniform, Tom? You thought it was too much or too little?
Yeah, I think I'm speaking from a father's or grandfather's point of
Oh,
view.
okay.
I think we need to cover that up a little bit more. I don't think that's going to take any points away.
Oh, okay. Probably not. But obviously, that's how every video clip I've seen of her, the um, the uniform is a little on the skimpy side. So I think that's her signature uniform. So, but yeah, that's Miss Saylor. And if you get a chance to watch her participate or compete, it'd be well worth it to support the sister and support UNT. So, like I said, these are not the sports we normally participate in. So I'm glad that we're able to expand our horizon to show that we can do more than softball, volleyball, baseball, of course,
you're
football.
absolutely correct. And so, all that being said, I say that tongue in cheek, but I'm kind of serious. But I think, kudos to this sister in competing and excelling in a sport that you don't traditionally find in a lot of our schools with our young people. And we want to encourage her and other young people to continue to excel in areas that you don't call traditionally black,
right?
Sports or sports with a lot of participation from black students.
Be a pioneer.
We talked about last week the story on golf, and now we're talking about swimming, Jimmy. So we want to continue to make sure that we promote and advocate for excellence in all endeavors, academic, especially athletics, things of that nature. So I think that's a great story, and we look forward to hopefully seeing great things from Miss Saylor in the future.
Yeah. And so, Tom, we have one more story that we're going to do before we bring our guest on. And this story is all too familiar, but I want to bring this video to our show for the opportunity to learn from it, Tom. There are a couple of things that I want everyone to pay attention to, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more on the backside of the video. So, three things to point out, Tom. If you ever get pulled over by law enforcement, a couple of things. Ask them to turn the bike, make sure the body cam is turned on. Ask for a supervisor to come to the scene, and then ask to make sure that video is uploaded to the central computer, because if you file a complaint, that video now becomes evidence, and you can certainly remind folks that tampering with evidence is a federal felony and a violation of civil rights. But also, while you're being videotaped by the body cam, narrate what is going on. Tell the story of what's going on so it's captured. So it's not just your word against law enforcement. You're capturing it in real time. So anyway, let's watch the video of what happened to this disabled gentleman with his interaction with law enforcement down in South Carolina. Okay. I believe it was South Carolina.
It was South Carolina.
Okay.
Burgundy shirt, get on the ground! Over here! On the ground! On the ground! Get on the ground! Do you not listen? Get on the ground!
This is Orangeburg, South Carolina officer David Lance Dukes responding to a 911 call that alleges the elderly man in the burgundy shirt named Clarence Gaillard trying to get into a house while allegedly possessing a firearm.
Is there a gun back there? By that truck.
No gun.
You're not listening, dude.
Bro.
You got a gun on you, man?
No, I ain't got no gun.
Right,
I don't want no gun.
Turn back over. Paul, you want to say?
And after searching Gaillard as well as the immediate area where we saw him earlier, the officers didn't find anything but what appears to be a stick or cane wrapped in duct tape.
Yep.
Listen.
Yep, they slammed my head down on the cement. Yep.
Go back inside. Go back in the house. Go back in the house. Ain't nobody talking to you.
I got head drummer.
Go back in the house.
Yep. Y'all bust my head down. Yeah, I've been in an accident. Yep. Y'all bust my head down. You threw me down.
I sure did. You wasn't listening.
Yep. No, it ain't. You ain't to throw me down like that. I'm disability.
Okay.
I got head problem. Yep. You threw me down. Yep. You threw me down. You threw me down. Yep. You bust my head down on the cement.
We then heard Gaillard clearly in distress and requesting medical attention stemming from Officer Dukes forcing him to the ground at the start of the interaction as the other officers responding step in to call for EMS. And in case you missed it, here's how Dukes feels about what he did to Gaillard.
Y'all bust my head down. You threw me down.
I sure did. You wasn't listening.
Yeah. No, it ain't. You ain't.
He got his hands in his pockets. I told him, let me see your hands, let me see your hands, let me see your hands.
Bust my head then?
He wasn't listening.
No, it ain't.
He got the, like this right here,
You grab me.
and we went on to the
And
ground.
you
That's
down
what.
on the cement.
Yeah, your head did hit the cement.
Right, cause you bust me down on the cement.
Where's the complainant?
You bust my head down on the cement. Ain't nobody
There ain't nothing about here want to press charges on.
Who called?
I'm not sure.
Take him out of cuffs right now. I mean, because that's what we
You're gonna
got.
have to use the force.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
slam my head down.
Dude, I didn't know what his
You
intention
use the
was.
force. You need to look at the camera.
Mayor, I'm going to take that into evidence of what he had.
What?
Well, I mean, that's the reasons I did what I did. You know what I'm saying? That's where I'm coming from.
No gun or nothing.
Because when he was behind the truck, I couldn't see what he was doing. And I didn't know where
There ain't nothing there.
that went. If it was still in his pockets when he come around that car with his hands in his pockets.
His doors open.
On camera.
Yeah,
Alright, that's
doors
fine.
And shockingly, this other officer actually checks Dukes and admits that there's no point of trying to justify his actions since everything was captured on body cam. And Dukes is legally obligated to upload the footage to the department. In another shocking twist to the story, Officer Dukes would actually be fired and charged with first-degree assault and battery for his misconduct against Gaillard, facing up to 10 years in prison if convicted. Gaillard has rods and surgical pins in his leg, knee, and hip from a car crash, in which he was struck by a vehicle while riding his bike. Officer Dukes ordered my client and another individual to get on the ground, but because of my client's disability, he's relatively slow, Gaillard's lawyer said. He was trying to get down as fast as he could. It apparently wasn't fast enough for the officer. Dukes approached him, who was in a defenseless position on his hands and knees, raised his right leg and forcibly stomped with his boot on the victim's neck and or head area. Gaillard's head struck the concrete of the parking lot, according to Dukes' arrest warrant. However, an incident report written by Corporal Brandy Smith describes the interaction differently. According to Smith, Dukes took his right foot, placing it on the subject Gaillard's back and pushing him to the ground. Gaillard's lawyer did praise the actions of the sergeant, seen here reaching into her pocket, for working to immediately de-escalate the sitch. The sergeant's body cam video shows her calmly asking Julian questions and asking the other officers if Gaillard needs medical attention. In her own report on the incident, the sergeant notes that neither Dukes nor Smith answered her when questioned if Gaillard needed medical attention, which she asked multiple times. The sergeant wrote that she was in disbelief over what she saw that afternoon. One officer would actually say on the record of Dukes, he is not telling the truth. Dukes kicked Mr. Gaillard in the neck. Months after the incident, the city of Orangeburg settled at $650,000 with Gaillard. He is pleased to put this very troubling incident behind him and looks forward to moving on with the rest of his life. We appreciate how quickly Orangeburg city leadership moved to make this right by Mr. Gaillard. I've handled numerous cases involving police violence previously, and rarely have I seen a city swiftly accept responsibility and also work to ensure that this never happens to another person, said Gaillard's attorney.
Okay. Taiwan, I'm glad to see that somewhat a little justice prevailed here. The city did the right thing, at least in their attempt to do the right thing. But my question is, after we dealt with David Duke out of Louisiana years ago, why would anybody hire a Duke for their police force? Not to put a bad label on the entire family, but come on.
I know it, Jimmy, and I am very familiar with Orangeburg County, South Carolina.
Oh, are you? Okay.
I've been there several times. They're referring to the police department, but I know the sheriff pretty well at Orangeburg County, South Carolina. Matter of fact, I saw him earlier this year. Good man, Leroy Ravenel is
is that one of your territories?
Yeah, his brother.
Okay.
And they're referring to the police department, not the sheriff's office. And Orangeburg County is a predominantly black community.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And so, when we talk about law enforcement and our community and people from the community being a part of the law enforcement equation, that is why this is important, because when you look at who is policing this brother, both the man and the disabled gentleman, again, that's why it's so important to have people from our community policing our own, because unfortunately, folks, Jimmy, don't always have respect from outside community.
True. So I think they noted the corporal, who was a black lady officer, who sought medical assistance. But I'm just amazed, Tom, that in the end, this officer is still trying to generate an arrest. He
Yeah,
wants the little stick to be put in the evidence. Well, okay, well, what's the crime? What
right.
what the- what are you going to charge him with to put this in the evidence? So he's still to the end trying to charge this man, even though he did wrong, rather than just man up and say, okay, I made a mistake. Maybe I
And
overreacted.
Jimmy, this was caught on camera. How many times do we see this, unfortunately, where it's not caught on camera, or the circumstances are even more dire than this? This is a disabled man, was not a threat, had no firearm. He basically pushes him to a ground, hits his head on the concrete. This could have been a lot worse.
It could have, Tom. We could be talking concussions. We could be talking some brain damage, and we still don't know the long-term effect. You won't know that for years to come. So hopefully, he'll be okay in the long run. But something like this, Tom, is certainly an abuse of authority and overreaction on his part. So I'm glad to see that he was fired, and hopefully they will be put in position to do this to somebody else.
And hopefully that $650,000 settlement helps his family out a little bit, and
Yes.
it makes those consequences a little bit easier to deal with. Even though Jimmy, in many of our communities, other folks in outside communities are too often policing our inner communities, and that has to change.
And just make sure that whatever interaction you have, make sure the body cam is on. You can ask for it. Also, make sure you narrate what is going on,
Right.
because not everything may be caught on camera. So if you were mistreated in any kind of way and the person was pointing the other way or not looking, or the body cam was pointing or turned off, or his hand may have been over it, make sure you narrate what's going on, and so you at least capture that. So in case you file a complaint, you have evidence there to back up your side of the story. So it's not just your word against law enforcement, because if it comes down to your word against law enforcement, 99% of the time you're going to lose.
You're right, Jimmy. So let's transition to the last, and what I consider is probably one of the most important parts of our show tonight, by far, talking about money matters and having our resident guru and expert in the house, Brother John R. Williams, CPA and man of many talents extraordinaire. Welcome, Brother Williams. How you doing this
You
evening?
got Brother Williams back. Okay.
Well, welcome, brothers. Thanks for having me back again. Man, the time flies by. It seems like it was just last week when we were talking. I want to say it's like 2 or 3 months ago when I was on the show. So
Yeah, it was last year.
Thanks for having me back, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
So tonight, what we want to do is talk about something that probably will impact everybody in some way or another, potentially, who is watching this show tonight or in the future. We want to talk about things that can put money back in your pocket, that can help your household. And so what we invited Brother William to do in talking to us tonight is talk about some things coming up this year, changing in the tax code. We had a conversation earlier this year about some things that, I discovered about, money transfers. And Jimmy, you and I actually talked about this, that may be now reported.
I was against him from the very beginning, Tom.
Exactly.
I didn't know
Yeah,
why
that's
exactly.
a hot topic now.
But I'm glad to see I never got on that bandwagon.
And then also to talk
Well, you
about
may have to.
and talk about some other things when it comes to capital gains tax, that capital gains tax that may impact your bottom line and your wealth planning for the future. So we're going to have John to tell us a little about what he's been seeing this year in the market. We know he's very busy with tax season, so we don't want to take up too much of his time. But kind of give us some highlights, Brother Williams, on what's going on this year. With the IRS code, what changes, what people need to pay attention for, how people can best plan for that. And then also we have this call-in number for anyone who would like to ask any questions, hopefully earlier in the show than later.
Not wait to the end. That's correct.
385-526-5245. But John, tell us about what's going on.
Okay. Well, once again, it's good to be with you guys tonight. Well, this year, first of all, normally the tax filing deadline is April the 15th, but due to a holiday in Washington, we have a few extra days. So the tax filing deadline is April the 18th. So individual taxpayers will need to either file by that date or file an extension, which will give you until October the 15th to file your tax return. But always keep in mind that an extension is just an extension to file the tax return. It's not an extension to actually pay. So if you feel that you owe, or I shouldn't say feel, really there needs to be a calculation done by either you or your CPA or your accountant to determine whether or not you may owe tax. And then if you feel like you do owe an amount in excess of $1,000, the IRS wants you to actually pay that amount to them in April, and then in October or sometime between April 15th and October the 15th, you can file the tax return. So I just wanted to throw that out to begin with. We talked offline about the third-party payments from Venmo, PayPal, I guess Cash App is probably still around,
Cash
right?
App, yes.
Zelly, I think I probably see Zelly, more than anyone, any of the other apps. So historically, the law was the IRS required third-party payment companies to issue a 1099, specifically a 1099K, if you had transactions to go through that system in excess of $20,000 or in excess of 200 individual transactions. So I believe it, off the top of my head, it was the Inflation Reduction Act, I believe, that actually changed that law, or temporarily changed the law. And it was set to require third-party payment companies to actually issue 1099Ks once the amount that was issued or that was transacted through their system was $600 or more, and that is
$20,000 down to 600.
Yeah, 600.
Okay.
And so obviously this law was passed mid-year, and so as we approach the end of the tax year, there began to be somewhat of a panic, not from the IRS's standpoint, but a panic from taxpayers, lobbying groups, and actually, the payment processors themselves, in concern that they would not be able to adequately, abide by this new law. So the issue is with these 1099Ks, at the moment, they're still working on them. At the moment, there's really no way to distinguish between what's business and what's personal. In other words, if I were to send one of you all $1,000 in Zelly, it could be for, it could be for something totally unrelated to business. So you can imagine the confusion that the law caused, because there was going to be just a ton of taxpayers who received 1099Ks who basically there shouldn't be any tax impact attached to those. So what the IRS did they heard the outcry of the public, and they have temporarily put the law on hold. So, but it is, unless they go back and change it, the law will become effective in 2023. Essentially, they're working out a lot of the details behind it. Uh, Most importantly, the third party processors have to figure out a way in working with the IRS to distinguish between business and personal transactions. And also they're probably going to have to do some hiring in terms of manpower to be able to generate all these additional 1099s, because that's not something they've ever had to do in the past. So, but so temporarily, and for the individuals who are preparing 2022 taxes, those they probably are still receiving 1099s, but hopefully you're not receiving any uh, that that are below that are above the $600 hurdle rate yet. So, but here's the interesting thing to keep in mind. And when it comes to a business, you have to always remember that if we're talking about a 1099K or a 1099 NEC, which is a 1099 NEC is basically issued to an individual when they perform contract work.
Right.
So if you have a individual that's working for a business and they're not a W-2 employee, but they're working on a contract basis, they'll receive a 1099 NEC. So the law has always been for the 1099C and the 1099 miscellaneous that any amount above $600, the payer is required by the IRS to send a copy of that form to the recipient. But the point that I wanted to make is that even if a company does not send you a 1099 of any type, if you have earned income, that income is taxable and must be reported on your income tax return. So
John,
let's
so
say
that
you perform $1,000 worth of let's say myself, if I perform $1,000 worth of consulting work for a company, and even let's say the company loses my W-9 and they forget to send me a 1099. Well, more than likely I could, I'm an accountant, so I'm going to call them and remind them about it. But let's say I'm not an accountant, I'm some other type of a consultant. Well, I'm still required to report that $1,000 on my tax return, regardless as to whether or not I receive a 1099. So it doesn't give me a get out of jail free card just because I didn't receive the form.
So John, let me ask you this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? So what happens if, let's say, okay, mom, dad, has a kid out of school, washer dryer breaks, and they give them, they just transfer them, maybe $500, well, let's say $650, $700. I don't know how much washer dryer these days cost. And, that shows up, they could do it via Venmo or something of that nature. How do you keep up with all of this? And what do people need to know when it's not earned income? It's just transfers. Let's say
Tom, that is income.
Well,
you got money that you didn't have before.
It's not earned income. Or, okay, let me give you another scenario. Let's say you have folks, you're going on a trip, and one person is coordinating all of the,
there you go.
just putting on their credit card. They're going to be paying for the 4 or 5 hotels on their one credit card as opposed to 4 or 5 people doing it. And so everybody just sends their money to that person.
That's a loan.
No, it's not a loan.
Yeah, I'm loaning you money because I'm paying for the expense, but you're paying me back. That's
okay,
a loan.
but that is not income.
Right,
that's
a loan.
Income.
It's
right,
not
that's
income.
a loan.
It's not income.
Right, that's what I'm
so
saying. That's a loan. It's not income.
So what do you?
And so that's really what the predicament is. That's the. I'm glad you asked, Tommy. That's one of the main reasons why the IRS decided to put a freeze on enforcing the new law is because at the moment, or at least at 12/31/2022, there was no way to distinguish between what was me paying you for a trip to Cancun, my part of it, versus me paying you for consulting services.
Right.
So what the IRS is doing now is they're working behind the scene with these payment processors to distinguish, to determine how they can segregate or distinguish the business versus personal items. What I think will happen, this is just, in my professional opinion, I think the 1099-K form will probably be changed to where it will reflect all payment transfers, but they will need to add a box to distinguish payment transfers that are either non-business or they don't have enough class information on their hands to classify it as business or non-business. Now, this is just, hopefully in another, 2 or 3 months, we're going to have some clarity, hopefully by the middle of the year. But that's the big issue right now. They were, the payment processors, they were just going to send out a 1099-K, and it was going to be up to me and you, the taxpayers, to figure out what was business and what was personal. And believe me, it would have been a nightmare if the IRS didn't put the brakes on.
So let me ask you this. Jimmy just brought up an interesting point. Mama gives daughter, $700, $800 to buy a washer or a dryer, or let's say that they had a car repair and they don't have the money, but the kids got to go to work, and mama gives them $800, or daddy gives them $800 to get a car repair. That's not a loan; it's a grant. Is that considered income now? That has to be taxed?
No, it's not considered income, but there still has to be some type of methodology of either eliminating that type of transfer from the 1099-K, or the 1099-K has to be redesigned to where a transaction like that is put in some type of non-taxable box. And the issue that we have, this is March the 22nd. So the issue that we have now, in my opinion, 3 months has already passed by. So will the payment processors, once the law is updated or changed, how are they going to go back from the time that the law is implemented or updated and flag those transactions? So like I said, I don't have access to their back office operations, but if they are not in some way already marking or flagging those non-personal transactions, I don't know how they would be able to do it in hindsight. Until the start of 2024.
We know this is going to be an accounting nightmare.
Yes, it is.
So
it's going to be good. It's more business for accountants, but it's bad news for
the individual taxpayers.
Because, at the end, as Jimmy said, at the end of the day, you're either going to need an accountant or you're going to need someone that's
a lawyer.
Hopefully not a lawyer, but you're going to need someone who's going to probably be able to get down in the weeds on all these transactions and figure out what's taxable and non-taxable.
All these people that are using these apps to transfer money, you're now just opening the door to a liability. And you don't have to prove your innocence. If the IRS ever decides to go after you, this just opens the door for them to come mess with you if they want to. They can just say, "Oh, you under reported your income, and now you got to go prove that you didn't." And you got to go find people and make statements and do affidavits and hope you can find everyone to validate and back up your story. Because if you can't prove that this was a gift or a reimbursement, you may have to start writing a
Yeah.
check or looking at criminal penalty.
Okay, let me
Yeah,
ask you.
the burden of the proof is going to be on the taxpayer, not the IRS.
All right, this is another question, John. So, all right, I know how to get around that. So I'm at the, I'm gonna give you $1,000. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you $599 today, and then next week I'm gonna send you $401. Problem
Well,
solved.
No, because you're over the
issue.
$600
Here's the
limit.
deal with that. The $600
cumulative.
total is per year.
Yes.
So
For one person.
if
Yes.
so that's if you send more than 600 in a given year, you're going to receive a 1099K. So but here's another point. I mentioned that if we are looking at actual income and not just transfer to transfer, always remember that that income needs to be included on your tax return, even if you don't receive a 1099K or any other type of 1099. But also remember, and this especially holds true to a lot of the younger crowd, like, and not just younger crowd, but I say younger crowd, but a lot of the people who drive for Uber or drive for it's not Go Eat, what's
Lyft.
the Uber Eats, or you know what I
Yeah,
mean,
Lyft and
the
Uber,
food
yeah.
deliveries. So what you want to remember is, even though you're receiving the 1099, also remember those there are expenses that you get to offset that income with. So my gut feeling, not my clients, because obviously I can steer them through their questions, but my gut feel is that there are a lot of taxpayers who are recording the income, the additional 1099 income, but they're not capturing all the expenses
Expenses that go with it.
that go with it. And
Yes.
so that's, if you're unsure, that's when you need to reach out to someone like me, because I mean, obviously, there's a fee that comes with that, but in most cases, I'm going to be able to, or another CPA, if you're missing deductions, even if it's $1,000 worth of deductions, once you apply the self-employment tax and the income tax, on just $1,000 worth of missed deductions, it could, easily make up for, what you have to pay a CPA or an accountant to help you out with the tax return.
So, John, let's be realistic. Some young kid driving for Lyft or Uber Eats or something, getting money transferred to them via one of these cash apps, transfer services. Are they really keeping track of their gas expenses? How many miles they're driving? Are they keeping the receipts? Are they keeping a
Well,
log of
well,
how much they're using their car for business transactions versus
yeah.
personal use?
Well,
Um, and
here's
so
a
they
good
get
thing.
hit with this 1099, that says, okay, you've earned an extra $23,000 in the course of a year. Okay, well, what do I do with that? And I go file my take that to HR block and file for my taxes, and have them added to my W-2 that I
Yeah.
received from my other employer. And now, instead of getting some refund back, I'm having to write a check to the government. What happened here?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Collegiate, for DoorDash is the other company I was
Oh,
trying to think of.
DoorDash. Okay.
But Jimmy, to answer your question, Uber, I have a couple of clients that actually, well, their children in college actually drive for DoorDash, and the other one drives for Uber. And Uber, both of the companies actually give them a summary report at year end. And I don't know how they calculate it, but well, I do know how to calculate it. Whenever they go on a run, it's recorded. The mileage
Okay.
is recorded. So they actually give them a year-end summary that lists the number of miles that they drove,
That
and
helps.
there are some other expenses that are smaller than the mileage expense, but there are some other expenses that I've seen on that summary that Uber and DoorDash keep track of. So they do give them a pretty good head start to doing their taxes. They're always going to be expenses that are probably outside of what they track. Not so much Uber and DoorDash, but I'm thinking about other businesses that issue a 1090. Most other businesses that issue 1099s. Let's say if you're doing some contract bookkeeping or work. Well, I mean, you got to have a PC, you got to have internet connection, those items, at least a percentage of it, maybe not 100% of your internet, 100% of your cell phone and whatnot, but a certain percentage of those expenses that you're incurring are eligible to be offset, to offset some of that income. Also, keep in mind if you're working from home and you have a dedicated office space for business, a certain amount of that of those home office expenses are deductible against income.
Let me put this out there real quick, everyone. John Williams is an expert in his field. And if you had to make an appointment to go sit down and talk with them, it would cost you. Here's your chance. Tom, put our phone number up. You can call John, ask him a question, and get some great expensive advice for free. So don't miss out on this opportunity. We only have a few minutes left.
Yeah,
and I certainly don't want anyone to miss out. So
right.
if you have a question for John, please call in right now and get your question in.
And we've got 3 minutes, Jimmy. So what we're going to have to go ahead and do is wrap this show up. And what we're going to do, John, is we're going to invite you back in April after the tax deadline to talk about.
Everybody may be in tears by then, Tom.
Well, Jimmy, they can, if they're unsure, the taxpayers could always file an extension and put the return on hold and then come back and talk to us after April the 18th.
Well, like you said, John, you still got to write the check, though.
We got to jump back on our hopefully our first show after April 18th and talk about how to work on reducing your capital gains tax. And what we're going to do is we only got 3 minutes left. We got to have
house, marriage, and children, Tom. Not necessarily in that order.
Say what now?
I said a house, marriage, and children, not necessarily in that order.
So, Jimmy, that's about all that we have time for today. It's 8:58, and we want to thank you for joining us again. Anyone who wants to reach out and contact Brother Williams for his CPA services, here at the bottom. And until then, Jimmy, we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, Jimmy, because if it is Wednesday night, Jimmy, are you mixing in the background? Are you mixing in the background? Jimmy, there's a bunch of background noise.